Thank you, Naomi, for the invitation to speak to you tonight. And so, yeah, I'm an artist, so I'm here. My background is sculpture and then electronic imaging. I am an academic, and what I was going to talk about was really more my trajectory over the last sort of 20 odd years. Katie has made me feel very old for some of the stuff that's happened. So my title at the University of Edinburgh is Reader in Technological Embodiment and Creative Practice. I had to look at it to remember myself. So what I find is, but I'm a practice-based researcher, so it's also sort of ironic that I'm a reader is my actual official title, which I do read, but I think it sort of sounds like a primary school level certificate. It sounds like in reality. So the work that I make is all around technology and the body and the lived experience of that. And it does come, I would say, it does fit in an academic way in the frameworks I would use, that it's feminist, it's techno-feminist, it's phenomenological, and it's new materialist. But the way that it comes out is it comes out as performance and art projects. So I'm saying performance, I say performance, but I don't necessarily mean theatre. I don't typically work in a theatre environment, although I do work with actors and dancers, there's them in the room as well. So, but I was going to just talk about how the progression has gone for me, because from when I graduated from college, then I worked very much independently first of all, and a lot of my work was funded by organisations like Creative Scotland, and also a lot of projects at the early points were also where I would say they were performative, not necessarily performances. So this is a project from 1998, when I wasn't 3.5. And what it was inspired by was the very, very beginnings of online dating stories coming out in the mainstream press. And I was fascinated in meeting people who met online, and I was fascinated by this idea. It's always this idea for me about how relationships and genuine human life and experiences that we are now so technologically mediated and scientifically encounters that we live so close to all of this. So this was really me at the beginning of this. So this was a project that I did where it was actually like a month-long project, a durational piece that was it all went onto the internet. There are so many parts of it now that I think it's basically a template for online dating now. I've done it a few times in projects where I think it's quite, maybe it's just the things that were around at the time. And then at this point what it was myself and another artist communicated anonymously for over a period of a month, and then at the end we met in person but with lots of the audience as well. And so then this is a project that actually Jean was involved with as well. This was from 2000, and this was a commission as part of the National Review for Live Art, which I'm sure lots of people will fondly remember. And it was from New Moves International and New Media Scotland were co-commissioners on it. And at this point, what I was doing in terms of academia was a very little bit of teaching, very occasional short-term contracts. And then actually what I got during the time that I was doing this project is I also got a John Florence Stone Fellowship at Edinburgh College of Art, so that gave me a year-long period working with academia, but it was really more like a residency, and I did do lots of residencies over many years. And this project was a live performance, but that had dancers, tango dancers that danced within the real space. And then what happened was, this is See You See Me, so it's the early days of video conferencing. It's basically like Skype now, but it was a lot more complicated. You had to jump, and what they did was they were in parallel moving around different servers across the world. So there was a sort of digital movement and the live movement in space, which my favourite was always when it landed. So one of the servers was Bad Puppy, which was a gay live porn site, which always made the audience go, oh! So it's lots of crotch shots. Anyway, so but then this is fast forward. So at this point though, then this is Glitching, which was a commission to, it was as part of the Scottish project, so the 2012 Olympics, and this was a commission by the Scotland and Medicine Partnership, who were based at Surgeons Hall. For this particular project, what I was interested in is the glitches within video games, within the characters, so how the glitches would make them behave in ways generally beyond what would be the mainstream movement. It might, I know I've had lots of interesting conversations and feedback around actually some of the movements that are more perhaps alive with some disabilities, but very much in terms of mainstream, this was not what the developers were intending, and I was also really, I've always been interested in technology that is also not necessarily the typical use of it. So this project I was by that point part-time, working, it would be very much a teaching post that it was classed as. It would be 0.5, I think, by that point, that I contract for. But it would be very, very teaching focused. I would be, in theory, getting some time to do research. In reality, that would be very little. It would be supposed to be 20%. But in reality, and what still happens quite a lot in terms of creative practice in academia, is you end up with a lot of part-time staff because you want people who are still practitioners who are working out in the world. I mean, I work in the design school, so we work a lot in terms of people who are actually working out as professional designers. So people come in on part-time contracts. What they end up doing is they do their research outside of their contracts a lot. We're really trying to move away from that. And myself now, what I didn't say at the beginning as well is I'm Director of Research for Design as well at Edinburgh College of Art, and I'm also coordinating the ref submission for design. So actually, it's now my job to try and champion that actually we don't just expect people to do the work outside of it, and we do a 40% slice of time is what it's my job now to actually try and push that, which I do very much believe in. But to go back to this project, so this was it was a live dance piece and an interactive installation, so it toured around Scotland as part of the exhibition, and then there was a series of performances as well. So this was a combination of some funding through the Scotland and Medicine Partnership, some through Creative Scotland, and some through the University of Edinburgh. And that's where I have, at this point, I was still having a sort of 1 foot in academia, 1 foot still outside, which was very useful for me for a long time because it gave me a flexibility of how to work, and also gave me additional pots of money that I could access for my work. And it was also an interactive installation, which toured as well. Then we have Eidolon, which we have Pauline here, you might recognise the issue. So this was a performance that I developed over about a 4-year period. It was Wellcome Trust funded, Creative Scotland and the University of Edinburgh again. And this was developed within a medical simulation centre, Freya as well. So it included actors, dancers. It was a very intimate piece. It was typically the largest versions that we did was about 25, but the smallest would be about 10 people going in at one time. This is a version of it as a sharing of the piece in progress. So you've got here as a combination of performers, audience and actual medics. So you've got an actual consultant anaesthetist and a floor nurse in the mix of people here as well. So that gives you sort of an idea. So I also work as well a lot of the time in non-typical art spaces. And this is myself and Pauline here in the control room for the piece. So I won't go too much into the details of it. But as you can see from this as well, what I do is I collaborate a lot. So I collaborate with other creatives, I collaborate with actors, dancers, choreographers, composers, but I also collaborate a lot with technologists, with programmers, and I also collaborate a lot with people working in medicine, so in the last project, but also in terms of science and technology. So this particular project I was working with biomedical physicists up in Aberdeen. So this was a commission that they're developing, the next generation MRI. And this was another project where I collaborated with Freya again on this. So this developed into a installation piece. So again, it's performative. It's a series of dance sequences which are projected. But so a lot of the time my work does bridge whether it's performance or performative. And then a couple of current projects I was just going to talk about as well. So now I'm actually full-time while I do a lot of like mezzanine of roles at the University of Edinburgh, and then try to keep my own practice and also very much try and champion other people's practice. And like I said, I'm very much trying to make it that it's at least 40% that my colleagues get. It's quite difficult to achieve in terms of as anybody working in academia will understand, the amount of administration and the other sort of layers of things, but it is also, we don't get the research out, we don't get the practice out unless you actually get the time to do it. So it's really trying to make an environment where that can happen, which is obviously easier said than done. But this is a project that I started 3 years ago, which is in a Eczema Genetic Research Lab in Ninewells in Dundee. So I did a 6-month residency there, working in the lab with them, which was great. I got my 2 different lab coats, my white one and my blue one, depending which part of the lab you're in. I love like a residency with an outfit, it's great. And then what I was most interested there was the actual skin cells. So these are the actual cells, they're about this size, they're like the size of a blister. So this is eczema skin being produced in the lab. And what I was really interested there, saying I'm interested in the lived experience here, I was interested in the lived experience of the actual skin cells. The cultures, they have a 3-week-long lifespan in the lab. So what I did was I interviewed the staff and I wrote a script based on the experience of the skin cells. So there's a sound piece which is from the point of view of the skin cells, and then there's various elements which have toured since around there, but I'm also in the midst, get a tiny bit of it there, I'm in the midst of developing a piece that will go into Summer Hall as part of the Science Festival in April, which is a mixed reality piece. So it's basically like the mix between virtual reality and augmented reality, as in you put a headset on, but you can see into the room, but you can also see the lab and the objects within it. So that will be coming up soon. And then the very last piece I was going to talk about was a piece that's in development at the minute. So again, this is access sometimes to other funds that I can get, which help push work forward. So this is a project I'm working on, which is about digital memorialization and how we live with the dead in the digital age, and I'm collaborating with, this is Sarah Rose Graeber, also Mona Young, the playwright. So Sarah Rose Graeber is a theatre practitioner, Mona Young, the playwright, and Tom Flint, who's a creative technologist and might have worked with me at Napier.
Our digital project.
I thought it probably was Tom. Yeah, so Tom works at Napier, and the 4 of us are collaborating on this project, which will be a live performance, immersive theatre piece. But this was a sharing that we did, so we've had 2 parts to the research, to the development so far. One was a residency at the Museum of Loss and Renewal in Colomacchia in Italy. So we spent 2 weeks there in October 2018, and then in June we got funding from the Edinburgh Futures Institute, because all of the funding for the new, which is going to be a gigantic new organisation within the University of Edinburgh, is around data-driven innovation, and they want things that are experimental, so we got money from them to do a sort of production workshop to do the next stage, and this is us working with audiences on the, so it includes things like a chatbot, we did, we did scans of objects that might be sort of, that was the idea that we would be memorialising objects of a character that then were made into holograms. So we're also using, also what it does is being within the university gives us access to a lot of equipment that we wouldn't personally normally have access to individually. And then this is my website, it's behood.co.uk, which has got lots and lots of documentation of all the different projects if you wanted to see any more. So thank you.